me say a special good morning to those of you listening to Classic Radio 105.5, 105.9 on the FM dial. Let me say good morning also to those of you viewing GBN TV. You're viewing Channel 7, Channel 11, Channels 20. Good morning once again. Welcome to The Point for today, Tuesday, the 30th day of April. Yeah, the final day of the month, right? Anyway, good morning to those of you who are, of course, via our social media platforms. You're probably just clicking that link, whether it's the YouTube channel or the Facebook page. Those of you via, of course, GBN's webpage. Let me say good morning once again and welcome. It's Opposition Tuesday here on To The Point this morning, and representing for this morning the New National Party, who's the opposition here in Grenada. We have MP Emmalin Pierre with us this morning. MP Miss Emmalin Pierre, let me get that right. Let me say good morning to her. Good morning to you, Miss Pierre. How are you this morning? And welcome.
Good morning to you, GT. Good morning to all of your listeners, your viewers. Good morning, everybody.
All right. And shall I say happy advance, May Day, everything in advance to you this morning also. And how you doing?
Well, I want to take the opportunity to extend Happy May Day to all of our workers, those who toil so hard, those who work so hard, particularly those who make a big difference as it relates to the development of this country. Those are the front line, those who sacrifice their lives every day for our nation and our people. You know, sometimes we take a lot for granted, you know, the people who protect and serve, you know, not just as in the Royal Grenada Police Force, but our nurses and our doctors, our teachers, you know, all of those who contribute, the people who ensure that our environment is clean. I want to wish everybody happy May Day, and you know, I trust that as you enjoy, you would reflect on the contribution that you make and know that we appreciate you.
All right. And I certainly know the listeners and viewers, especially those, of course, the workers out there, do appreciate you taking the time out to wish them all the best also. Let's get into the conversation this morning. There's lots been going on in terms of, you know, the last sitting of Parliament. There have been, of course, a couple of bills that were passed and so forth. The first one I want to get into in terms of the conversation this morning, it's always seemed to one of those bills that's you know, the conversation has been going around for a while. Knowing the recent trend that we've seen in terms of, you know, crimes related to guns and so forth have been taking place in Grenada, and you know, there's been that appeal for individuals to, you know, to bring in those guns. So there's this gun amnesty that was passed. Tell us from the opposition point of view about this particular bill, and how do you feel about this particular bill? Is there any queries within the bill that you have that you may want to express this morning, or maybe you just think it's good to go, if I could say that, with the bill?
So this has now been passed, and in the last sitting of Parliament, there was a resolution that was brought. And if you recall the previous sitting where this was brought in the form of a bill, I believe everyone on the opposition side who spoke on the matter would have expressed support for the bill that was brought before the House. A gun amnesty is something that is not new. It is something that is done and has been done in very recent times in a number of countries in the region. And so it's something that we don't have an issue with. As a matter of fact, anything at all that may in some way contribute to a reduction in what we are seeing, which is an escalation in gun violence in this country. The illegal possession of firearms, we're seeing a major increase there. Anything at all that can be done, we as an opposition, we would definitely support. However, I think it's important and instructive to note that we believe that by itself in isolation is not going to solve the problem. As a matter of fact, we believe that there's need for a multi-pronged approach to this. So how are we addressing this issue from many different standpoints? So we've accepted the fact that a number of these guns are coming through the port of entries, right? So the question is, what are we doing there? What new, what additional are we doing there to address that? We've accepted and we've agreed that most of the persons found involved in these activities are young people. So the question is, what are we doing there additional? Right? We are extremely concerned, for example, in the area of of youth, that we seen a reduction in programs, a reduction in initiatives, a reduction in the engagement of young men in positive programs. And so we are saying what should be happening in that regard is actually the opposite, right? I always like to say you take the reactive approach, but you also take the proactive approach. And the strategic approach we've been calling on for a very long time, because it's not just gun violence. We are talking about crime in a holistic way, in a broad sense of the word. And so we really want to see some kind of strategic intervention coming from the government, but not just the government saying that this is what should be done. We've been advocating for the involvement of all of the stakeholders coming together around the table to devise strategies, to look at long-term solutions. As I said, not just reactive, but taking a long-term view as to where do we want to be maybe in the next 10 years as it relates to a safe society. We have major concerns, I believe, as a people, but all is not lost. We believe that if the government pull this back and involve everyone in pulling it back, we can see some progress there.
Right.
So the issue for us is not really about the amnesty particularly, right? It's a singular measure that could bear some results. Let's see what happens there. As a matter of fact, I believe one gun off the street is a success, in my opinion. Now, what we are most concerned about, and I want to particularly make mention to that, in the last sitting particularly, there was mention of what happens after the amnesty. So we know this is for 90 days. You turn your gun in, or you bring a gun in that you found, whatever it is, something in your possession, and you will not be required to explain where you got it, how you found it. That's the amnesty. Now, we found it rather strange that in addition to that, the government went on to make the point that after the 90 days, anyone found in possession of a firearm will not be granted bail. In other words, straight to Her Majesty's prison you will go. And as an opposition, we are very, very concerned about these statements. It has been repeated, not just in the lower house, it's been repeated in the Senate as well. And we believe that as an opposition, we have to express our concern about this. Number one, this is unconstitutional, right? People have a right to liberty. And so it still obtains that a person is innocent until proven guilty. When you say, if I'm found with an illegal weapon in my possession, this could mean in my car, this could mean in my house, this could mean in my yard, on my property. And so we do understand the separation of powers. And so the judiciary normally would consider the circumstances and grant bail where the judiciary considers some kind of discretion is needed. And so we don't understand why it is that the government would attempt to use the parliament to imply that after these 90 days, a person could be denied of their constitutional rights and be sent to prison for possession of a weapon. And I want to make the point, I stress that not every person who is found with a weapon, a firearm, is somebody who intended to commit a crime or somebody who committed a crime, right? And that's what I'm saying. There are circumstances that could have resulted in that person having that weapon in their possession. And so we are extremely concerned about where this is heading. I remember one member of the government team making the point, we better go hard or go home. That sounds like a period in our history that I hope we are not going to ever go back to. And so I would want to caution, the opposition would want to caution that we carefully think about this before we move forward. We know that the government can bring legislation to say that no bail would be granted to anyone who is found with a weapon in their possession. But we're saying, even before you consider that, think about this long and hard. make
Alright.
sure that this is what we really want to do.
All right. There's been also concerns, talk around, I would state. There's also been a member of the opposition that actually made the comment in Parliament about the buyback policy. What's your take on a personal level with reference to that? Did you think that's a direction that government should go or not?
Right. So my personal view on the buyback policy is not one that I would want to share at this moment. But let me just say this: that the view expressed as it relates to buyback policy is one that was expressed as a personal view.
Okay.
And so different members of the team may have different opinions on the buyback policy. Where we are totally together is that we don't have a problem with the amnesty. We are proposing that government consider using this not just as a singular measure, but expanding into other areas. I don't feel very strongly, I'll be quite honest, on the buyback policy. I know we do have members who feel that that might be a way of encouraging, because everybody is concerned. What can we do? And I don't think it's this or that or the other, but everyone having a different opinion as to what they think may encourage somebody. And so when members of our team promote the buyback policy, I think it's genuinely proposing ways maybe to motivate people, to encourage people, it's debatable as to what you can achieve from it. But I believe it's a genuine place of concern that if we do that, people might be motivated to turn it in, that there are people who may not want to turn it in because they paid for it, and if you're going to buy it back. But as I said, my personal view, which you asked for, I don't feel very strongly about the buyback policy.
Okay, all right, I appreciate that. Now, still on the gun amnesty this morning, is there any crucial element of the gun amnesty that you think could have been implemented or inclusive in the bill that wasn't?
Well, I would say generally we believe that the things that needed to be included were there, right? Generally speaking. What was introduced, because the issue of what happens after the 90 days, this was introduced thereafter, and this was part of the presentation, which is our major concern. As I said, we would have preferred to see something that was a bit broader, but we are generally satisfied that the amnesty is granted, and we, just like the government, we are hopeful that this would be that this would be a success. Many countries have not had the levels of success that they expected.
All right.
Again, I want to emphasize, we cannot just do an amnesty full stop and expect that we are going to address this problem that seems to be growing. You drive through a community and out of nowhere, you hear gunshots. People are firing gunshots just as a social activities all over the place. And this should not be allowed to continue. If we don't take a strategic approach to addressing this problem, it's going to continue to escalate. And that, I believe, is our major concern here.
Would you propose, if for some reason the 3 months amnesty and of course bears fruit, as you said a while ago, and there's been a positive response from individuals in terms of returning guns that may be in their possession, whether that's been obtained illegally, would you recommend an extension if there's been a positive response from with individuals who of course may have guns and decided, well, I'm going to turn it in, and individuals may, for some reason, they didn't come up to the plate in an early time? Would you propose an extension for some reason or the other?
Of course, I would be quite willing to support an extension if there are indications that people are coming forward and they are actually surrendering those guns. I would be quite supportive of that. And I think the opposition team will be supportive of something like that. We don't have a problem with the amnesty. We definitely don't have a problem with the amnesty. We are saying amnesty plus. That's what we say. There is need for a broader strategic approach to this problem. Amnesty is not going to solve it.
We due for a break. Let's take it. We'll be right back with much more. Stay with us, folks. It's To The Point here, Classic Radio, GBN TV. We coming right back after the break. Stay with us.
On Saturday Saturday, May 4th, there will be a shift on the island as the biggest grilling fest in Grenada moves to the big parish. The Maggie King of the Grill competition is at Progress Park, St. Andrew. Come taste the most sumptuous creations from the grill as top chefs and food enthusiasts showcase their culinary skills. Maggie King of the Grill is a festival like no other with live soca music, fun attractions, and games for the entire family. Then from 6 p.m., get a chance to win up to $5,000 cash in bingo. Interested vendors and grillers should call 456-3454 to register. It's the Maggie King of the Grill competition at Progress Park, St. Andrew. Gates open from 12 noon. Bring your appetite and stay tuned to this station for more details.
It's the Maggie King of the Grill 2024. Powered by Maggie, the secret to great cooking. Rubis, the official fuel of King of the Grill. Hunt's, the official barbecue sauce of King of the Grill. Grenada Paper Products. Independence Agencies. Agents for Swiss Products. Grenada Bottling Company. Clark's Coats Cameron Spiced Liqueur. Bryden and Miners. And Waggity Rentals.
In honor of the Grenada 50th Independence, the Royal Grenada Police Force Band presents the second annual Mother's Night Out. Mother's Night Out. The concerts all going down on Sunday, May 12th from 5 p.m. at the Grenada Trade Center. Featuring live from TNT. It's crazy.
Time to come. America will have a black president.
John King.
How many more?
June Lodge. Together with the Hitman Inspector, Valine Ned, Samantha Dixon, Alex Phillips, Shane, Innocent, General PP, Kareem, Alexis, Ron Barry, the African Man, and much more. Dress code elegant. It's Mother's Night Out, the Grenada Trade Center from 5 p.m. on Sunday, May 12th. Lots of giveaways and prizes to be won. Champagne and roses on entry. You don't want to miss this amazing experience for mothers. Your tickets only $70 and are available from Gittins Pharmacy in Grand Dance and Grenville, Grenadian Optical, the Police Band House, Police Canteen. Make this a date for mothers.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers, to The Point for today, Tuesday, the 30th day of April 2024. Let me say welcome back to MP Emmalin Pierre. Good morning to you once again, and welcome back to The Point this morning. Let's continue on our conversation that we started. Of course, we were talking about the government. I still want to keep the conversation on the communication bill that was passed in the last Parliament. Now, this bill speaks of communication, and I've heard, of course, the various members of the opposition, during the debate, speaking, giving their views on it in terms of issues that they may have with the telecommunication bill. Tell us about the bill and what are those concerns that the opposition do have as it relates to the telecommunication bill passing, of course, in the last Parliament.
That what was brought to Parliament is really an amendment to a previous act that existed, telecommunication. And we know that this has been generated from ECTEL, which is regional. And so every country would have to review, tweak where necessary, bring to the Parliament for passage into law, and then for implementation. Now, if we go back to the genesis of this, and we can all identify with where we were and where we are today. So the whole transformation of the telecommunications sector has a lot to do with the work that took place during that period, the formation of ECTEL and the involvement of ministers like former Minister Gregory Boeing and others. And basically, when this law was actually passed, it was intended to remove any, let's say, openings where providers would stifle competition, where they would avoid being regulated. Because, we had a monopoly then, and then we opened up competition, which is why we can make free calls to the US right now, compared to $2 plus some years ago. So the whole idea was to open up competition, get rid of the monopoly, and to ensure that those service providers who are operating within the space, that they would be regulated. So obviously, over the years, there has been identified some loopholes within that regulation. And so what ECTEL and others have been doing, partnering with the countries within the region involved, is to look at what are those ways that we can ensure that we tighten this thing to ensure that we're promoting continuously competition within the space, but also that we continue to regulate tightly this market. Now, the operation of the service providers within the market. So what we notice as an opposition is that there has been some changes as it relates to definitions within the legislation, right? And for us, when we study those definitions, when we get technical advice on those definitions, we are very concerned that there can be implication for freedom of speech. We are very concerned that it can limit the free access and use of the internet by persons who do so for many different reasons, right? And so when we examine the content, we were expecting the government to be more forthright, more open as to who will be affected by this legislation. If you go back to the Principal Act, you would realize that back then the focus was on those major companies operating telecommunication services within the region. Now, we are convinced that with definitions such as electronic communication service and electronic communication network, that this might be broadening this umbrella to take in ordinary people who might not have been considered before as it relates to the service that they are providing. So let us say, for example, someone providing a news service, community news service, right? The question is, how is that person now affected by this revised legislation? We are very concerned. There are some very, very broad terms contained within, and there has been no effort by the government in the last parliament to explain this to the point or to consult prior to. So maybe there was consultation even back then with major service providers, but what about other people who feel that their businesses might be threatened by this, who feel that they might be affected in one way or the other, possibly by this legislation? And so I have been speaking with a number of persons in that space, and there is the concern, one, we are not sure that this applies to us. We believe it is, but we need to see something specific saying that we are exempted, that it does not apply to us. So, for example, within the legislation, there is a reference to exemption, but it speaks about, for example, the Royal Grenada Police Force, right? It speaks about health systems, right? So the question is, there is a reference to exemption, but who else can be captured under this net that could have implication, we believe, for freedom of speech when this act is implemented? Now, when you speak about something like a transmission system, we know that 20 years ago, this would have meant something very different to what it means in 2024. And so we are not going on previous interpretation of these terms. They are very broad. And as I said, all the technical experts that we have engaged, they too are extremely concerned. What is the mischief that the government is trying to do here? What is it that the government is trying to achieve? What is likely to be drawn into this net after the passage of this law? And so that for us is a major concern. We believe that this is going much further than just major players, major stakeholders in the telecommunication sector.
If I'm to interject, and you just submitted that P, are you saying in your interpretation, or are you saying interpretation of the act that was, of course, amended, that regular users of programs, just broad based, we assume the internet is an open market in terms of broadcasting in some countries. Are you suggesting now, for instance, the GBN, who has a broadcast license, if we broadcasting now via the internet, are you now saying that in your interpretation a license may be needed to broadcast, maybe for a YouTube channel or Facebook page channel also? Is that the interpretation that you are gathering from this particular amendment of the act?
And as I said, from all the technical experts that we have engaged, they are of the impression that this can be as broad as the examples that you have used. So let us use, for example, I'm just going to try to pull up here very quickly, the definition. The definition of electronic communication service. It says a service provided wholly or partially by the conveyance of signals on an electronic communication network, right? If you look at what is an electronic communication network, it speaks mainly to a transmission system. Now, an internet infrastructure, if you go in by technical terms, can be considered an electronic communication, a transmission system, sorry. And so it means that when you use broad terms like that, we are left to conclude that it captures everything within the term. And so that is where our concern lies. We are not concerned about those major companies that we want to ensure that this act regulates. We are not concerned at all that you are trying to ensure that competition is not stifled within the market. Where our concern lies is, what else are you doing within this piece of legislation? What else are you planning to do within this piece of legislation? And that is why we are appealing to this government to still use the opportunity to engage all of those persons who are involved in broadcasting, not through the traditional means and systems, but to engage them, clarify to them what exactly, how would they be protected through this legislation? Because as far as we see, there is nothing, absolutely nothing there, in our opinion, that says that these people are protected.
All right.
And once they are not, it means that you are now going to be stepping into a realm of infringing on people's rights, right? Their constitutional rights. You are now going to be infringing on freedom of speech right there, in our opinion, if this is going to be interpreted and this is going to be implemented in the context of the definitions that we are seeing there.
How concerned should it be for, broadcasters who may not be broadcasting under the normal realm, as we would see in this day and time? So, of course, in the traditional or the terrestrial radio context, if we could say that as a GBN and so forth. How concerned are you for individuals who do their broadcasts, via the internet, as you would say? How concerned is this particular act and amendment that has been, how concerned they should be in terms of gaining more information as to what the act really speaks of for them, or individuals of who broadcast on that particular nature?
And I think the lack of clarity is what they should be most concerned about, because we are in a technological age. And you're far more technical in that regard than I am. Every day there's a new app. Thousands of apps. Every day there's a new device that is coming out. Every day there's a new program that's coming out. This thing is evolving at lightning speed. It's a revolution, technological revolution, that we almost don't even have control at the speed at which it is happening. And so the intent of this is not to stifle people's use of it, is to maximize people's use of all of the possible services and opportunities that are there to make life easier, right? To access opportunities. So when you look at, for example, the whole development in terms of artificial intelligence, now what we want to be doing is exposing and providing that highway, that free highway, that people can expose themselves to the knowledge and the opportunities to prepare themselves. You don't want to be doing anything at all that is going to limit people's access to knowledge, access to information, access to develop and create new spaces that they can operate. So when you speak about upskilling and people finding new ways, when you look at the new skills that are going to be required, if you're talking 10 years down the road, 5 years down the road in terms of technology, then what you want to do is to give people a free rein to be able to express themselves through technology, right? And of course with limits of the law, of course, and to ensure that they develop all of the necessary skills that they can to take advantage of the development that is taking place in this area. So we do not want to see anything at all that would stifle the opportunities, that would stifle people's use of those free modes of communication, right? And so again, I'm saying we are seeing some very broad terms that we believe they're deliberately placed there. That's our belief, that is deliberately placed there to ensure that other people outside of the major companies that we refer to, right, the major players, that they can be roped into this legislation. And we called upon the government to be specific, to be clearer, to ensure that there's a consultation with these people. And to date, we are not satisfied with what we have seen from the government side.
Yeah, I'm certainly sure, of course, we'll get some clarification on that pretty soon in terms of, the experts within who will come in from the government side and speak to the nature of the bill. That could probably eliminate all the concerns that you have that would certainly bring this to a closure.
And that's problem number 2, because we would have expected that would have come prior. This has now been passed, right? This has now been passed. And so what we are saying is essentially what you're suggesting should now be done. This should have been done prior, to ensure that everyone concerned understands how this is likely to affect them or not affect them, and to probably propose alternative. Now, one might want to say it's a regional piece of legislation, but countries do have that right to tweak and to make the necessary amendments that suits their local situation, right? And so we are appealing to the government, although we believe this should have come prior, right? Putting the cart before the horse. We want to suggest that this is still done, some kind of urgent consultation, because these people are asking, imagine they're coming to opposition members and asking, what is our take? What is our view on this amendment? And what is our take in terms of the interpretation? As I said, we have engaged some technical persons, and from their advice, from their interpretation, this is too broad to not have a place where you define who will be exempted apart from those who are currently listed.
All right. Let's move on a wee bit in our conversation this morning. Minimum wage. I want to get into a bit of a discussion in terms of course, the opposition, watching the rollout and so forth, that it been implemented a few months now. What's your views now from the opposition point of view in terms of watching the rollout? Is there any concerns about it? Are you satisfied in terms of how it's been rolled out thus far since the, of course, implementation of the minimum wage?
And maybe just before I respond to the issue of minimum wage, I just want to also point out one other concern that we would have raised that still remains for us a major concern. The penalty that goes with this piece of legislation. In our view, it's obviously disproportionate to the offense in question. When you're speaking about 10 years in prison, a fine of $1 million, we don't understand why the penalty and the offense are not relating in a way that is more proportionate. We're very, very concerned about that. And far less, if this is going to spread beyond a major company, the question is this likely to roll into the domain of an ordinary citizen? So that is why it's so important that the legislation should be so clear that it specifies who exactly would be affected in some way or the other. And there is a measure of concern that I have picked up from many persons who until this point are not clear what the government is trying to say to them directly as opposed to those major companies. Minimum wage, we've always made the point, and I've said so personally as well, that we support increasing minimum wage. We have absolutely no objection to that. I normally make the joke and say it should be even higher, right? What we have a concern with is the impact of the introduction of minimum wage at the time that it was introduced. Now, quite obviously, when and how you introduce something can have different effects, right? And so government ought to assess the economic environment when they're taking such a major policy decision, when they are taking such a major policy action, right? Now, you want to assess to be able to determine what is going to happen. So you should not, 2 months later, find out that so many people are now losing their job because of this. So the question is, could there have been another way of rolling this out to reduce the impact, the negative impact that this is having on businesses and ordinary people? So I can tell you for a fact, in my constituency, and I'm sure it happens in every other constituency, there are people who have lost their jobs since the introduction of minimum wage. The question is there something that government could have done to create the enabling condition to make it more palatable, the introduction of the minimum wage at the time that it was done? The economy, although other things are said, when you look at the state of the economy, businesses were already complaining that they were not generating the kind of income, the kind of revenue that they were generating around that time in 2022 and before. So they have reported decline in economic activities. Now, if you're going to add minimum wage on top of that, obviously you're going to have a concern. So there are some businesses you walk into and it's very obvious that there has been a reduction in employees. And so we were hoping that the government would have done something to safeguard, because what is the point of increasing minimum wage and then I lose my job? What is the point of increasing minimum wage and then I'm on rotation? Right? And this is what we observe in a number of business places are now rotating workers. A number of business places are forced to reduce the number of workers. I'll just give one practical example of somebody that I know personally, who prior to minimum wage basically just supervised his business. Now that person has to cut the number of days that some of the workers are actually working so that owner of the company can now fill in for those persons. And that is because that person genuinely cannot afford to meet the demands of the increase in minimum wage. Now, the economic activities would have declined so significantly between the last election and now that this person finds it impossible to maintain the number of workers that they had prior to minimum wage and to continue to pay what is standard. So in essence, I'm saying I fully 100% endorse minimum wage increase and what has been done, but we are saying that it should not have been done in isolation. There should have been a broader study of the situation to adopt certain measures, additional measures, to implement other measures to ensure that it did not have the kind of effect and impact negatively that it is currently having.
Right.
And that for us is our major concern.
Government has spoken about reduction in unemployment. So you were stating that because of the implementation of the minimum wage, the individuals are losing their jobs. So I'm kind of missing the whole story within there, because I'm seeing from reports from government and hearing government ministers speak about the reduction in unemployment. I'm now saying that the minimum wage is causing individuals to lose their jobs. So how can minimum wage be reduced and individuals are losing their jobs still?
Mm-hmm. Right. So let's get practical, right? I am not going to go with the theoretical and the theatrics that we see when people just loosely say, the economy is doing well, the economy is booming, people are doing well. That's okay to say, but let us connect to the reality on the ground, right? You can say this in a place of comfort, right, where you are not connected to the reality on the ground. Now, if you go to St. George's right now and you go into, just pick any 10 stores, any 10 businesses in St. George's right now, I challenge you to do that after the program, and you tell me if any of these 10 businesses would say to you that business has been better in the last year. Let's just use the last year, right? You walk and find 10 people and you just ask them, have you had an improvement in your standard of living in this last period? The point I'm making is, It is okay for you to quote certain things that maybe some external organization may have said, for example. So I've heard quotations like this: the economy is doing better, people are doing better, their lives have been improved. But if you look at even the consumer price index recently, which was gazetted, of course, point to the fact that there has been an increase in the cost of food and medication, right? So if you just note that in the context of a person who lose their job, medication increase, cost of food increase, you must know, look at the cost of gas, for example, right? There were a number of measures that the previous administration would have taken, and that is why I'm saying the enabling condition. When you're going to take a measure like that, when you're going to implement something like that, you want to consider all the other factors, right? And so we are concerned that if you take, let's just use the issue of gas price. We had a cap on the gas price at $15. The government came into office, and no problem if you say you're going to remove the cap, right? Now, the government associated the removing of the cap with a reduction that came thereafter. Well, we are saying the reason the cap was there was not for a reduction. The reason the cap was on was to prevent it from going over $15. But if you look at where it's at now, it's way over $15. And the question is, what measure? So how is that business person now affected with the increasing gas price plus the minimum wage, right? And so in isolation, if you take one item, one area, it may appear to you as if everything is okay, but take them all into context. Look at the reality on the ground. Get out of the office, go into the community, go into the villages, pop in various businesses in the community, in the towns, and see what is happening there. It's a totally different picture.
All right. MP, we drew for a break. Let's take it when we come back. I do have another question I want to ask when I return. We also give the opportunity to our listeners and viewers, if they do have a question or two they may like to ask when we return after the break. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back.
Mark your calendars, football fanatics. The GFA is turning 100 this year, and we're ready to celebrate. It's GFA's Legends Weekend, a 3-day extravaganza, kicking off on Friday, May 3rd, and running all the way till Sunday, May 5th. Witness history in the making. The Caribbean taking on the world in a clash of legendary international footballers on Sunday, May 5th at the electrifying Kirani James Athletic Stadium. Get ready to roar with the crowd as iconic legends like Emmanuel Adebayor, El Haj Diouf, Alex Song, Michael Essien, Luis El Matador Hernandez, Shaka Hislop, Asamoah Gyan, Ricardo Bibi Gardner, Russell Latapi, Shallery Joseph, Jason Roberts, Dexter Daps, and a whole host of superstars light up the pitch. From breathtaking goals to unforgettable memories, GFA's Legends Weekend promises an epic celebration of football you won't want to miss. Keep your eyes peeled on GFA's social media for the full squad reveal. GFA's Legend Weekend. Be there. Sunshine Promotions is rolling out the red carpet for all mothers. It's a night of love. Saturday, May 11th at the dazzling Radisson Crown Ballroom. The celebration kicks off at 8 p.m. with the show starting at 9 p.m. Promising a night filled with joy, music, and appreciation. Prepare to be swept off your feet with performances from the legendary Mikey Spice. Mikey Spice. The dynamic Lion Paw, the sensational Valine, and the soulful Laura Lisa. It's a lineup that promises an unforgettable night. Get your limited early bird tickets for just $100 EC and ensure you're part of this grand salute to mothers. Tickets available at Giddens Pharmacy in St. George's, Wall Street, Wharf and Grenville, Chucky's Bar, Cass Unisex Boutique, Quick Stop, Pierre's Barbershop in Victoria, Calico Shopping Center in Sates, Rena Mills in Carriacou, Crown Collection, Health Plus Pharmacy Grenville, Heather's Boutique, and GoToFed.com. Stay connected with Sunshine Promotions on Facebook and Instagram for all details. It's a night of love. Saturday, May 11th at the Radisson Crown Ballroom.
Welcome back, listeners. Welcome back, viewers, to The Point here, Classic Radio, GBN.TV. Good morning to those of you on our social media platforms. Also, good morning to those of you listening and viewing once again. And Pierre, welcome back to the program this morning once again. And I do have a question I would like to ask. I hope I get a brief response from you just for time, and then we can, of course, open those lines and give the our callers and, of course, viewers and listeners the opportunity to call in and ask a question or two. Now, recently there's been always that issue of the constituency allowances. Give us a bit of an update on that. I know there's been concerns from the opposition that relates to it in recent months. Has that issue been resolved? Is everything okay when it comes to constituency allowances? If you could answer that for me.
So there may be some minor unresolved matters, but generally speaking, I believe that has been resolved. The opposition would have raised some concerns as to how the government was planning to introduce this, and we believe, generally speaking, that those have been addressed. But let me make the point, because we noticed that there has been a different communication, a different message coming from the government, and we want to make it abundantly clear that these resources have only been made available in this current month, right? The month of April. There has been communication from various points of this administration that we have had these resources and we have not been making them available to people. And I want to make it abundantly clear that those have only been made available to us during this month of April. And we continue to say that when you look at what we had prior, we still prefer the system that we had prior to this administration taking office, where it is that a constituency allowance was not provided, but that constituencies had access to what we referred to as the Needy Assistance Program, where we could have assisted persons based on their needs. There was a wide range of areas that you could have supported and assisted persons. We still subscribe to the fact that this method would be far more beneficial to persons who are in need than the current construct.
All right. Thank you so much for that bit of an update on that. Call us once again, 435-2041. You have the option of calling via the WhatsApp, and you could also call directly, 435-2041. We do have our first caller.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Telesford, and good morning to you. Guess is she right there in studio? Can she guarantee that she can hear me?
Yes, she's hearing you. Go right ahead, please, sir.
Hallelujah. Good morning, Miss Pierre.
Good morning.
You know, this morning, coincidentally, well, whatever it may be, the word of the day was demagogue. And the question was asked whether or not we have it in Grenada. But that's just to make a light moment of it. In your utterances, Miss Pierre, relative to the gun amnesty, you made a very interesting statement that the government should express, quote-unquote, a broader strategic policy. You agreed with the amnesty. When I say you, I refer to your party, the party that you represent. But the government should give a broader strategic policy. Now, my understanding is you're an elected member of the parliament. In other words, you form part of the state, the organization. Question, do you have any contribution to this broader strategic policy that you would like to see implemented so that we can get the thing marching well? Number two, you spoke relative to the increase of salary, wages, stroke salaries, etc. That many people are losing their job. This is a very loose statement. My suggestion is that we should be more specific. It is said that Jesus spoke with numbers. Do you, as an elected member of parliament, have any statistics, empirical evidence of the amount of jobs lost as a result of this activity? And finally, could have done something does not mean was able to do something. They're different. You can't do what you could have done. Thank you very much. I trust my questions make some sense. Have a nice day, will you?
Thank you, sir. Response to the caller?
Of course, and thank you very much, caller, for your question. So let me address the first issue as it relates to policy strategy, if you want to refer to it in that way. Number one, we said to the administration when we recognized that there was a significant increase in criminal activities, we said to the administration that there was a policy that the previous administration, our administration, would have developed, and particularly at a point where we had some concerns. And we believe that that would have worked extremely well, that model, where we brought together all of the stakeholders and they came up with that strategic plan as it relates to addressing crime. So we advised that this same approach can be used. Even if you think that that strategic plan would have been outdated, you can still look at it. I looked at it and I think it's still very relevant today and can be tweaked. So things can be added, things can be subtracted. So that is one. This was done and we believe it worked well, and we were recommending that. The second thing, as it relates to policy/strategy, is that the opposition did not just suggest that this should be done, but we took the lead and we actually called a consultation where we brought together a wide range of stakeholders. As a matter of fact, the night before the activity, the government had a national announcement that indicated that they were planning to do an activity like that and that they are going to be setting up a commission that is going to come up with a strategic plan. And this is quite a number of months now. And Caller, I would really wish that we can get an update on that as to where is the government with the national strategic plan. So we actually, after consulting with all of these people, persons with legal background, persons from communities, NGOs, the church community, people with law enforcement experience, members of parliament, quite a wide range of stakeholders, we actually provided a copy of what came out of that consultation. So if you ask me if we would have done anything at all to aid in this process, I believe we've done quite a lot. In addition to that, we have also indicated to the government that we stand ready to collaborate, to participate, to do anything that you call upon us to do, because we are concerned that this is a national situation that requires all stakeholders, regardless of political affiliation. So that is, so I guess you may have missed this, and so I'm sure that this is instructive for you to note. The second question, as it relates to statistics. So I would want to agree with you that there is a need for empirical data on this and statistics and gathering of statistics. And so we have a statistical department. We have a department that actually deals with this. And I would want to encourage and agree with you that this piece of work needs to be done to assess the impact of minimum wage implementation and the effect that it is having, but not just from that perspective, just figures. Conversation, the softer side of things, to call a forum with business persons, to hear from them. What is being taken now is a hard approach, that you march into a business place and ask the workers, did you get the increase? Did they pay you? How much did they pay you? We are saying that yes, you want to protect the workers, but if the businesses are not supported, if the businesses are not okay, how do they engage workers? How do they create the jobs? So you want to see, is there anything more that government can do to support businesses, to place them in a position where they are better able to survive and to deal with the situation? Because it is real. And so for me, you speak about data and numbers. For me, one person losing their job, having to go home in a time like this, when the cost of food is so high, when the cost of medication is so high, when there are so many other issues that are confronting people, I mean, one person is a concern to me. So I know for sure it's not one person, but one person is a concern to me. And that is why I'm saying, let us take an approach that says, yes, we are implementing minimum wage, but let us, as we go along, look at how do we roll it out to ensure that it does not have a devastating effect on ordinary people, particularly in rural areas, like in the St. Andrew area, where if you lose your job today, it may not be like, for example, in St. George's, where you can just hop to another place and maybe find a job. And even that, I'm sure, would be a challenge, right? So that is the point that we are making. It is not just about numbers, right? Numbers are great. Get the statistics department to do some studies there, but also let us look at the real effect that this is happening and what can be done to curb that, to cushion that. And I'm sure that a softer approach of conversation, ensuring that we know, let us use a practical example. So one business person, I'll just give a practical real life example. So one company that had to send some workers home and have some on rotation. You know what is the situation? That company provided a service to the government. Do you know that it took 9 months for the government to pay that company? That's the point I'm making. So how can we ensure that policy positions of the past, for example, what is the time frame for which we are going to owe you? Are we going to stick that 30 days we want to cover all of our debt, we want to pay all of our local service providers? What is it that we're going to do to help you? Now, if we're putting on minimum wage and we are taking longer to pay you for services that you provided to us, obviously, you're going to find it very difficult. And that's the point I'm making. It's not the minimum wage. It is what are those other things that we might be able to do to make or create that cushion as we implement minimum wage, that companies and individuals are not affected to the extent that they are.
All right. We do have another caller. Caller, good morning. You're welcome.
Hi, good morning to you and to Miss Pierre. First of all, let me address the last matter. Just last night on Beyond the Headlines, the trade unions, including the Trade Union Council, were the guests. And that question was asked about the impact, negative, if possible, of the minimum wage. And the answer was that there was talk about it possibly happening, the loss of jobs, before it was implemented. But since its implementation, they pretty much heard nothing of significance. And the main concern was that people not applying it in a timely manner. Now, we don't live in a perfect world. And in every case, unfortunately, there will be winners and losers in every matter. I was not to any of the consultations, but I was one of those who expressed concerns that you're mentioning now. However, we have to look at how many persons benefited from this. That's why the figures come in. We have a working force of how much, about 40,000, 50,000? What percentage of them benefited from this? How many persons were negatively affected? Then we're able to say that this thing was overall a benefit to the state. But there will always be one you can point to who may have suffered, or there will always be one business you can point to that may have been adversely affected. But the overall picture is what we have to look at. And your administration, your government had years and years, they have never touched that matter of minimum wage. The last time it was attempted in a limited way was by the same NDC about 12 years ago. You haven't touched it. You not even with a 10-foot rod will you touch it. Now it's being attempted, and it has to be fine-tuned, and it's been worked around. But I don't think you are morally able to criticize it. That you never tried it, and it's beneficial. On the matter of the guns, we have to realize that unlike the United States, where the Constitution gives the right to bear arms, there is no such constitutional right in Grenada. And if you bear a gun without a license, it's a major risk that you are taking. However, I would say that people don't just arrest people and put them in prison. There is a Department of Public Prosecution. And the DPP, after assessing a situation, will be able to make a decision as to whether this person should or should not be charged. We heard of a case just last week where there was a homicide. And within 48 hours, a decision was made that it was self-defense. Such a major issue. And the person was not charged for homicide. So I don't think, I think we are being alarmist here, and we're trying to make mountains out of molehills. But we have to realize that national safety is important, national security, and there is no law in Grenada that allows us the right to bear arms. And if I have a weapon in my possession, call the police, call 911, alert somebody that I have this with me. If somebody left it in my car, then the DPP would know exactly how to look at this thing and what to do. But don't make it look as though they'll just pick up people, they'll just pick up people and put them with no bail, totally innocent people, and they have no recourse. Don't make it sound that bad. I don't think it's that bad yet here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Any response to the caller, MP? We do have another caller on hold.
Definitely. So I would say this on the issue of the gun amnesty and the point that the caller make. Definitely. Now, I can only go on what was said in Parliament, so I can't go on the caller's opinion. What was said is that after the 90 days, anyone found in possession of an illegal firearm will not be granted bail, right? And so the point that the caller made as it relates to the DPP and all of that, that's a totally different issue. Now, what you are doing is definitely actually stepping into the realms of the role of the judiciary. And who give bail? Who agrees that the circumstances warrants a person getting bail? Now, that's the judiciary. So if the government is hinting to wanting to bring legislation, as a matter of fact, when it was raised, someone from the government side made the point. We make laws, right? And it's we who make the laws that the judiciary would be able to apply the law. And we understand that. But the law currently does not say that. The judiciary uses discretion to decide right now if I should be granted bail or if you should be granted bail. And we are saying until such time that is different, we should not be making a statement to imply that after the 90 days, anyone found in possession of an illegal, so whether it's on your property, in your hand, in your vehicle, that you will not be considered for bail, that is unconstitutional, and that's the point that I'm making. The second thing, as it relates to the trade union statement, and I just want to say this, that everybody wears a different hat and everybody represents totally different stakeholders. So the caller, I'm quite sure, may be speaking more from a technical perspective. So that caller is interested in numbers, and if more people are not affected, then it's good. I can't speak from that perspective. I can speak from the perspective of a parliamentary representative who want to ensure that persons within my constituency, people I represent, are not affected in any serious way by this action. And I'm saying that based on what we've seen, I am concerned. Now, if the trade unions are saying that they've never heard of any concern, they don't know of any situation where businesses or individuals are affected, then I would be even more concerned about that statement, because one ought to have heard and seen that this implementation, and the caller alluded to that there are some issues. The extent of the issues is not really my issue. It's not my major concern. It is that there are persons who are affected. So if you say to me that we have a system in place, that we identify these people who are affected, so there are 10 people in Grenville who lost their job because of this, okay, we have a program in the Ministry of Social Development, through NIS, through somewhere, that is going to cushion the immediate effect. This is a shock. Immediately, you've been working for 5 years. Immediately, you're told that you're going on rotation. There was no hurricane. There's no COVID, right? Well, all we had was the minimum wage that would have affected you. And we are saying not the minimum wage. I'm not attacking the minimum wage. Let us devise strategies and programs, initiative that would ensure that whether it's 1, 2, 10, 20, 40 people, these are people we are talking about, not numbers, not statistics. And if a mother is going home crying to 5 children, 4 children who are students, and have to receive finances to go to school tomorrow, then that is a concern for me. That's not a statistic. That's
All right.
not numbers.
And we do have another caller in line, and we also do strap
because of the salt we've seen in.
Get some closing comments from you. Caller, good morning and welcome, and please be brief because we are a bit strapped for time. Caller via WhatsApp, good morning.
Good morning, Ms. Pierre. Ms. Pierre, I just want to ask you two quick questions. All right. Was the unemployment rate of young people in your constituency seen that you saw for this 20 years? And then, my second question, you had made some statement in the past about Peter, about giving children rum to drink from the rum shop and the campaign. Okay, which I have the tip. And then I want to know, do you feel the same way during the time that you made that statement about Peter? And then another thing I want to ask you again, why are we not seeing Peter on the NNP platform and Vivian since he made the announcement that he insisted in being the leader of your party, but since you make it, we keep seeing you regular and we can't see Peter.
Thank you, caller. Thank you so much. Response to the caller, MP, before we take a wrap for today.
Yes, so mindful we are wrapping up. I would say the last question you would have to, and his Honorable Peter David, you would need to communicate with Honorable Peter David. The way that this is done is based on availability, so you would need to communicate with him to see, whether you're satisfied that there's no other issue that you might be implying. The second thing, you may want to provide the information that you're referring to as it relates to Rum Shop. I'm not sure what you're referring to in relation to the subject that we're discussing. And as it relates to the unemployment rate, I'm going to check the statistics department to see if they have that statistics available. I'm going to provide that to GT so he can provide it to you.
All right. MP, we did speak, of course, of the gun amnesty. We talk about the telecommunication bill. We spoke of the minimum wage, your contingency allowance. Those are some of the conversations we did have this morning. Any closing comments before we take a wrap for today?
Yeah, and I'll just close on the point of the caller before the last as it relates to the voice that is speaking. And I'm very mindful, of course, that we all carry different voices because we represent different organizations, different people. So a person might be speaking on behalf of the government, a person might be speaking on behalf of the trade union, whose interest is to have minimum wage, right? A person might be speaking on behalf of people who are affected by a particular policy decision, and that is where I'm speaking from. And so all I'm asking on this particular subject is that while we support minimum wage introduction, that we are calling on the government to immediately review what has been happening to ensure that persons are not affected to the extent that they are. And that can be the introduction of programs, initiatives that would cushion. So just like the new National Party administration in COVID, realizing that many people would have lost their jobs, or some people, one person, whoever lose their job. I'm not about the numbers here. So it's insignificant if it's 5. Is very significant even if it's 1. And so we're saying, what is the measure? Is it the stimulus package that is going to be provided for those persons like we did during COVID, for example? On the issue of gun amnesty, we're saying again, we have no issue with the gun amnesty. We are very concerned of the lack of a strategic intervention, number 1. And 2, we are even more concerned about recent statements which seems to imply that after the amnesty would have ended, any person found with a gun that is not legal will not be granted bail. And this is very different to what the caller explained about the DPP there. We are seeing this as infringing on people's constitutional right, and we're advising very strongly that the government rethink this position and that we continue to allow the judiciary to act independently in this regard.
MP Pierre, I want to thank you once again for being on the program this morning. All the best for the rest of the day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and all the best to your listeners and viewers. Have a great day, everybody.
Same goes out to you. Hey, folks, that's when we take a wrap for this edition of To The Point for today. Best wishes goes out to everyone also. Those who contributed to today's program. Have yourself a good one, folks. That's where we say goodbye and all the best. I guess we don't have a program tomorrow being the 1st of May, so I guess you will join me again on Thursday.